So I have to start again. Thank you, my staff, who has finally unmuted me, and hopefully you can now hear me. I want to thank you for signing in today. I do apologize for the late start. We had some technical issues here. We have two attorneys helping me, and one of them just got here. So I'm Ken Kirschenbaum, which all of you probably know, and today we have a great webinar by Bob Williams and his Briscoe team. For those of you in the New York area, you know that Briscoe is one of the premier, if not the premier, fire alarm company in New York City, which is one of the most difficult jurisdictions, I suppose, to install fire alarm systems. And today's presentation is to acquaint alarm companies who are thinking about getting into fire alarm systems or who are perhaps in it, to discuss all the different issues that may arise. So I'm going to introduce Bob Williams and his team. I'm going to unmute them right now, and you are unmuted. And Bob, are you there with your team and ready to go?
Yes, thank you very much, Ken. I'm ready when you are. If you could put the first slide on, please.
It's all yours.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Somebody suggested that in order to alleviate the technical difficulties, you should have used 3 attorneys, but I don't know. Anyway, good afternoon, everyone. I heard we may be having record attendance at a webinar today, so in order to commemorate that, we are going to be offering a discount on our engineered fire alarm systems products and services somewhere during our webinar. So it's not, don't get nervous, Ken, it isn't your contracts that we're offering the discount for.
Good, that's the first plug. I'll be seeing how many more we get.
Well, let me tell you, a lot of things have changed for the security alarm installers over the years. I was a security alarm installer myself. In addition to my hair getting a lot grayer from the original days, back in the day, we did a lot of foil and contacts and hardwired systems. Today, security alarm installers, the market is proliferated with wireless devices and lots of exciting remote management devices. However, these security alarm installations, especially in the residential applications, are now more of a commodity and less of a specialty than they used to be. A lot of the security alarm installers, and I know we were originally years back, faced with the situation of using volume production in order to survive, to compete against a lot of the direct marketing companies and the direct-to-consumer do-it-yourself kits. Traditional alarm companies should seek specialization, especially in fire, in order to insulate them from their competition. One of the really big things that a security alarm installer would want to go into fire is the additional reoccurring revenue opportunities that are available in the fire alarm business. One of them is mandated inspections by jurisdictions, which keep the income coming. That's very important. Usually in security alarm systems, that's not the case. You also have the central office communication income revenue stream, and in fire, many times, in order to change companies with security, all of a sudden you can just, your customer may get a notice or may call you and say that somebody's got a lesser price. I know, especially now in New York City, in order to change Central Station, it is a process. Many times it involves a reinspection. So a lot of times your customer will be paying, playing two-strike baseball at least before they change the Central Station communication. So you have a lot more credibility with a customer, and also you have service opportunities. The fire alarm industry is virtually recession-proof. There's a lot of perpetuity, they call it. I always say that nobody takes a fire alarm system out of their building, even in a challenging economy. What the security alarm dealer must understand, however, that when you're when you get into the fire alarm business, it takes a team approach. Either your team can be in-house, like we have and the presenters will be going over today, or you can use outside consultants. We are outside consultants. We're engineered system fire alarm distributors. We sell the parts and the smarts in order to be able to get a system done. We don't do the installation. So we're partners in protection with a lot of security alarm dealers. And that's very important as you go into this industry. Your sales psychology and the state of mind has to change. Ken, you're going into as a residential alarm system installer or salesperson, you're going into a customer and you're going to design the system with that customer to pick the particular items you think that are going to protect them the best way. That really doesn't happen in a fire alarm scenario because a lot of the requirements are code mandated. And you need a lot of other participants in order to make that system work. You may need a design engineer. You may need to get an approval from the owner of the building and other things. So there's a lot of different ways. The responsibility, and I've written in some of your blogs, is very, very incumbent on the residential or anybody going into the security alarm business. You must make sure that you do your homework before you start. Liability does definitely increase, and once you establish a team, then you can go into it. First, we're going to hear from one of our team members, a very important team member, our Vice President of Sales and Operations, that deals with the requirements of fire alarm on a day-to-day basis and has been doing it for over 10 years. Dave Miranda. Dave, one of the first things that one of the security alarm, what's going to excite a security alarm installer is his customer is going to say, I need a fire alarm system. How does the installer get started on doing that?
Well, thank you, Bob. Welcome, everyone. So how do you get started when your customer says, I need a fire alarm system?
Dave,
yes.
before you get started, I just want to remind you and your team, you need to let me know when I need to advance to the next screen.
Yes.
Okay?
We're good so far.
Thank you.
Thanks. In my experience, qualifying a request for a fire alarm system from one of your customers is very important. Who is asking for the need for a fire alarm system? A request from an AHJ holds much more value to you as a seller of fire alarm systems. Are there complete structural floor plans available? These will be necessary for the design and filing process. Does your customer's building occupancy type allow for the system they are looking to install? Sometimes your customer is looking for a simple system. However, the building's occupancy type may determine a different, more complex system. Bob will touch on that a bit more later. Next slide, please, Ken. Now that the system is installed, what's next? Well, after the fire department has inspected and improved the system, we provide an in-service, which is formal training that we give to our customers on the operation of their fire alarm system in order to prepare them for an alarm or trouble condition. Now, when someone asks me what I do for a living, I normally tell them that I'm in the RMR business. Providing inspections, service, and monitoring are a must. We usually only take on projects where we know contracts will follow. Also, as a way of giving back, we provide training to our customers for various certifications that are required by New York City. Our training is an effort to assist in their passing of these exams. Next slide, please, Ken.
Okay, Dave, I spoke about it originally to have a partner in protection and not a competitor. The engineered system fire alarm distributor, just like ourselves, we can help out a lot of the new security alarm installers and create a relationship, an ongoing relationship with them. One of the things you mentioned in your previous slide is, what happens when you get finished with the fire alarm system. Many times our customers will ask us to go to the final inspection and be there with the authority having jurisdiction, be that the fire marshal or the inspector, to make sure that they get the system passed. What are the services that a fire alarm engineered system distributor provide, and are they competing against the security alarm installer?
Well, services of an engineered fire alarm distributor such as ourselves are as follows. System engineering is providing complete fire alarm design as per local codes. Filing and expediting with the local AHJ, submitting designs for approvals and expediting the process with in-staff expediters. Becoming a fire alarm distributor with a commitment to a Class A type fire alarm manufacturer such as EST, Edwards Systems Technology. Appealing violations and reconsiderations with the fire department. The ability to get meetings with the local AHJ to discuss pre-planned design, as well as appealing violations that we feel are not justified, is extremely vital. Next slide, please.
Made a lot of good points, Dave, and I'm sure a lot of the installers will want to have somebody work with them from the beginning until they build in enough existing infrastructure in their own companies. One question I get a lot from new installers especially is, I have a customer that I maybe have a residential or a small, small commercial property that I'm doing the security, and there's an existing system in the building. Can I take over the existing system very easily like I can maybe on a residential security system? Can I take it over in a fire system?
Well, there are things you need to ask yourself. Can you program the system you are taking over? This is necessary if you are thinking in terms of your customer's best interest. Your ability to properly service them is limited without this ability. Are you a certified manufacturer's rep as required per NFPA 72? Again, can you properly service the system while keeping your customer's best interest in mind? Some jurisdictions, such as New York City, are requiring technicians that perform programming on systems be certified by the manufacturer of the system. But does the local AHJ recognize you as an authorized fire alarm maintenance company? Again, in some jurisdictions, you must be a recognized and approved fire alarm company, such as here in New York City. Now, you may get a call from your customer who says he has a database, and that what you have to ask yourself at this point is, again, keeping informed with what's best for your customer. Can you properly program the system even if the database is available? Are your technicians factory certified to properly make programming changes, including providing most current software updates and any bug fixes that may have come along from the manufacturer? Well, this concludes my presentation. I want to thank everyone for the few minutes. And for everyone that is in attendance today with us, I would like to offer a 5% discount on any new system that we can partner on by year's end. Thanks again.
Before you go, we do have a question. It might give you an idea of the level of listener that we have, level of experience. The question is, what does AHJ stand for?
That's a fantastic question, and we're going to be touching on that in a few minutes. Great question now. Next slide, please, Ken.
Okay, Ken, just as a follow-up for that question that you mentioned, I'd like to introduce another member of our team, J.R. McCotter. J.R. is our Chief of Technical Services. He has over 12 years experience in the field, and J.R. has worked on servicing, and inspecting, and programming small one-story systems up to 60-story systems and above. So he has a lot of expertise, and he'll go over a lot of the definitions that your questioner, your participant is questioning about. And one of the most important things that any security alarm installer has to ask themselves is, do they have the technical, additional technical expertise above themselves to get this alarm finished to conclusion? JR, would you?
Thank you, Bob. Good afternoon, everyone. Now that you've made the decision to move forward with the commercial fire alarm installation, you should determine if your technicians are qualified for the job. And to answer the question right off the bat, what and who is the AHJ? You might have heard the term before by Dave and Bob. The AHJ has a big part in the process of putting a fire alarm system into service. The AHJ is the authority having jurisdiction. What that means is that they mandate and enforce the code requirements established by governing bodies. Those governing bodies can be state legislature, county legislature, or city, town, or village councils, depending on the occupancy type and the building use. In New York City, the city council sets forth the laws outlining the fire code. So now that the law has been set by the governing body, they need someone to enforce the code. In most cases, the municipalities employ fire marshals or fire inspectors to act as the AHJ. In some cases, the code doesn't cover certain occupancy types, and the AHJ could be from a state agency that enforces the code applicable to the occupancy in question, such as nonprofits or educational facilities. Next slide, please.
Thank you, JR. Many times, a lot of the acronyms used in the fire alarm industry can be like alphabet soup. Another one is that we hear very frequently is NFPA. JR, what is the NFPA? Is it a law or is it a guideline?
Well, the NFPA is what most AHJs derive their fire code standards from. As stated in the scope 1.1.1 of the NFPA 72, it provides minimum recommended guidelines for fire alarm system installations. And as I said, it's a document that is widely accepted by the AHJs. Although it is a basis and a guideline, AHJs may require additional levels of protection. So basically, the NFPA 72 provides a vast set of guidelines that governing bodies and AHJs use as a baseline to develop and enforce their specific fire codes. It is important to check with the AHJ to see which edition of the NFPA 72 the local fire code is based on. For instance, the New York City Fire Code is based on the 2002 edition. They are, however, currently working on a revision to the fire code to adopt the 2010 edition. Next slide, please.
JR, in addition to the security alarm owner having technical expertise, additional technical expertise is needed in order to make these fire alarm systems work and get approved. Talk a little bit about the additional technical expertise that are required by the authority having jurisdiction.
Sure. More AHJs have begun to pay particular attention to Section 10.2.2.5 of the NFPA 72. And this section pertains to the service personnel and their experience. What this section does is it requires technicians to be factory trained on the specific system in question, certified by a nationally recognized organization such as NICET, and registered, licensed, and certified by state or local authority. For instance, New York City now requires fire alarm technicians to hold a specific certificate of fitness to inspect, test, or service a fire alarm system in the 5 boroughs. In order for the technician to gain the certificate of fitness, they need to pass an FDNY administered exam or already possess a NICET Level 2 certification. Next slide, please.
JR, we're hearing a lot about NICET from authorities having jurisdiction, associations are getting NICET training. Some jurisdictions allow you to design plans yourself if you have a NICET certified technician above a certain grade. What is this NICET all about? And do a security alarm installers really need NICET? We need to understand NICET before they get into the fire alarm industry.
Well, NICET is the National Institute for Certification in Engineering Technologies. NICET provides universally recognized certification for fire alarm technicians, and various levels of NICET indicate the technician's experience. For each level of NICET experience that technician wishes to gain, that tech needs to pass a computer-based exam and submit work experience to NICET for review. Experience levels range from level 1, basic fire alarm, to level 4, project engineering. As I mentioned before, AHJs, while enforcing section 10.2.2.5, often look for that NICET certification as part of their requirements to work on a system. Thank you, Bob. Next slide, please.
Are special licenses required for the company owner, technicians, and customer requirements in order to do fire alarm systems? I know many of the listeners today are licensed for security systems, and maybe their licenses cover security and fire alarm systems. But if you're going to be doing work in a particular municipality, it's very important that you check to see if there may be exceptions. For example, in New York City, in New York State rather, the New York State license is accepted throughout the state with one large exception: municipalities with more than 1 million people in that municipality. And of course, we know that's the Big Apple, which is New York City. So there's additional requirements for New York City to do installation, service, and inspections on fire alarm systems that would not normally be required in other areas in the state. So you've got to check with your local municipality and also your local alarm association and check with people who are doing fire alarm systems or your engineered system fire alarm distributor. I know we many times counsel new companies on what the rules and regulations or requirements are in that particular area, especially so they don't lead their particular customer astray. They may be doing security systems for, let's say, a company who has a couple of locations, and all of a sudden they started to get into fire. They say they can do it, and they come up with a lot of exceptions. They may not be licensed to do fire in that particular area. You will find, as a company owner with a many state license, you can qualify your employees, but you are the responsible party in many locales for fire systems where you will actually have to, you'll be definitely responsible for their training as well and their continuing education training. NICET is one of the things that may be required, and you'll be asked to provide training to your technicians in order to be NICET certified. Some certificate of fitnesses in New York City are company specific, so if that technician passes that certificate of fitness, if he changes to another company, he will have to re-qualify that for that certificate. So that furthers your tie with your technician and you as the responsible party for what that particular technician does. You also may be the qualifier for plan preparation, for designing the plans for the system. If you design a system and it's not approved, what happens? Especially after you may have started a system, and an authority who has jurisdiction will say, well, you have to add something. Who is that responsible for that? Is that you, or is that your customer? What you want to do when you get in the fire alarm business, especially if you've been successful with an owner or one of your customers in security, is not to mess it up. Don't overcommit yourself unless you know what you're talking about. And there's many times you'll knee deep in situations. Technicians, as I said, there's municipalities have approvals. I can tell you in New York City there's a separate certificate of fitness for inspection of fire alarm systems. If you want to service fire alarm systems, you have to have an upgraded certificate of fitness, and the company also has to have a certificate of fitness to be able to inspect smoke detection systems in New York City. And to install them, it's a licensed electrical contractor or a special license to be able to do that.
Bob, before you move on, I have a question that's been presented. I don't know if you want me to interrupt you or you want to wait till the end.
Let's go. That's okay, Ken.
Okay, so the question is, do you, which I assume means Briscoe, have a licensed professional engineer on staff? If not, how do you get around New York City Education Department requiring provide stamped drawings? That sounds like a setup. Do you have
Well, you know, I'm not, we don't particularly do work for the Department of Education. If you're saying if they require that the company who is the engineered distributor or the company who is installing the system have a PE on staff, then we do not have a PE on staff. So,
but you can hire one.
well, yes, we can hire one. You know, I mean, I don't see that as being a requirement that I've ever heard before. You know, sometimes some contracts will require a NICET level 4 person to be available, but it doesn't have to be an employee of that particular company who has the contract. But they would be obligated to have a licensed professional engineer stamp plans or a NICET level 4 person be on hand as required. But I don't think it has to be an in-house thing. I may be wrong for the Department of Education. I'm not sure.
Let me clear up another thing, because I know that I heard you offer a discount before. So certainly there are alarm companies out there that are not willing to share any part of their experience, license, or market, and all they're willing to do is say to somebody, you have a system that you can't install, well, just turn it over to us and we'll do it, and thank you for giving us a referral. Is Briscoe extending itself to partner with other companies in the area that Briscoe operates in?
Without a doubt, and we do have existing partnership with other security alarm installers. We, you know, as we're doing this seminar, Ken, it's really, you know, some people have told me, why are you telling other people how to get into the business you're in? But it's really a paying forward thing, and we do have a lot of, as I said, security alarm companies that look to us for guidance, where they may do the arrange for the central station monitoring, and we would do the inspection, or they would do the inspection and we would do the service. Depending on their qualification and their level of expertise, we're all for keeping the security alarm installer involved, because it's really their customer, and we're really their partners in protection.
This might be another setup. I'm not sure. What level of NICET has Briscoe's staff achieved? Anyone on staff higher than a level 2?
Yes, there are people. There's 2 level 3s, so I don't know if that makes a level 6. I'm not sure, but and we do have access to level 4, you know, certified people as well. But for all our licenses and requirements, a level 3 is the only thing, and we have quite a few of our technicians as well as our office staff are NICET certified, and all our field technicians are certified for the municipalities which they operate in. I hope that helps.
Yeah, go ahead. You still have the comm.
Yes. Okay, now we're going to get to a very important a person in the equation, which is the customer. Now, as I stated before, if a security alarm installer comes to us, it's always their customer. We don't want them to just hand it off to us. We want to be their partners in protection. But when you get your customer involved in a job, they may need approval for the property owner in order to get a system approved or even installed. Let's say a daycare center. Your customer, you did a security alarm system for them, you did their home, you did one of their daycare centers, they want to open up a larger one. it's located in the basement, of a building or on the third floor of the building. You got to be careful when you do those things. First of all, you got to get approval from the owner of the property, because they, in most municipalities, are the responsible party involved. So they have to get an approval. They also have to. You also may have to protect other floors of the building, especially depending on the occupancy, like a daycare center. You may have to provide protection throughout the building. The property owner may not be willing to do that. So these are all considerations that you have to do and consider before you actually give that price to that customer. And you can say, well, it's your responsibility to find that out, because if a security installer does that, you may wind up upsetting the customer so much, because with daycare centers and things like that, unless they get that fire alarm approved, they cannot open their facility. So that's how important it is. And the security alarm installer may wind up losing the security systems from that customer because of bad information that they are working with for the fire alarm system. It's important that that a certificate of occupancy be examined, that the work be approved by the fire department and the building department. You just can't start a fire alarm system and start running wires. You need approvals by municipalities before you're able to do it. We had a situation where somebody wanted to open up a nightclub. The only problem is the certificate of occupancy for the building didn't allow a nightclub in there. And they were very, not very forthcoming with the owner of the building about it. And the alarm company was in a situation already. So you got to be so very careful. There's so many different players involved in any fire alarm installation. And forget about liability. The responsibility for you as a installer is to get together the proper people, a team together, to be able to, analyze these situations and do what's best for your customer. I know it sounds very complicated, but what it does, it proves to really insulate the security alarm dealer from a lot of the competition. Next slide. What is the difference between the voluntary and code-mandated systems? Question I get a lot. Because, let's say, the insurance company says in order to get the discount, you got to put a fire alarm system in the building. Or in order for us to give you an updated policy, you must get a fire alarm system in your building. Or you just want to make your staff safer. Do you have to comply with the rules and laws and regulations? Because you don't really have to do this. I know with code-mandated systems, they're required for certain business operations. In order to get a daycare center, you may need a Board of Health permit for over a certain amount of people, or a cabaret, or other type of occupancies. Before you can get, the base approval, you need a fire alarm system in there. Before you can get a certificate of occupancy and be able to legally occupy a floor space, many times if you're missing an outlet, it doesn't make a difference. If the a motion sensor doesn't work, they're not going to prevent you from occupying the premise. But when that fire inspector goes there and you have a couple of things not working on that fire alarm, you may wind up getting a letter of defect, and that's going to prevent the building department from issuing a certificate of occupancy in many cases. There's also, that may not be code mandated, but in certain areas, like in Florida, for example, they have a Florida fire alarm code. In certain areas of Florida, like Boca Raton and Delray Beach, they require UL-listed systems. And that's even a bigger advantage for the security alarm dealer once they're approved by UL, because if, for example, the system doesn't work and they don't want to, and the customer does not want to fix the system, the the installer is allowed to pull, can request to pull the UL certificate, or maybe, threaten to pull the UL certificate, which will have ramifications for that particular customer. So in a way, it's somewhat of a collection vehicle or a conformance vehicle that's very important. To sum it up, whether you're a voluntary system or code-mandated system, if I walk into a building or anybody walks into the building, the public's right-to-know laws say that they have a right to expect that the system that's installed, they don't know if it's voluntary or not, has to be installed with the same requirements as a mandated system. So the answer is you can't, just because you want to be a nice guy or a nice girl and install the system for somebody, it still has to meet code standards. Now, in certain municipalities, they have not enforced that in residential occupancies, the same as they have in commercial occupancies. But you got to be just very careful about how you approach that as an alarm installer. If you're installing a system in a two-family house that is, let's say, a nonprofit agency, which would be considered more of a commercial occupancy than a residential occupancy, even though it's a residential house, you'd be required to conform with the commercial code. So that's a very important part. Next slide, please, Ken. Okay, this is an area that I know you have a lot of expertise in, Ken, and you've been our partner in protecting and helping us with guiding our customers in this regard, and that's contracts and insurance. Maggie Eckel, our Vice President, Assistant Vice President of Accounting and Compliance, who is a top negotiator of contracts, because it's a lot different when you're dealing with fire and larger locations, where she's negotiated from a one-page contract to contracts for universities and hospitals that are as long or if not longer than the Dead Sea Scrolls. So Maggie has a lot of expertise in this area, and she was more than willing to share it with you today. One of the questions, do you have proper contracts, and what is my exposure in different commercial fire situations? Maggie?
Thank you, Bob. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Standard contracts for your company should always be reviewed by an attorney who specializes in the security and fire alarms industry, kind of like Ken at K&K. Contracts should be designed to protect the body of your company. It's very important, first and foremost, when you're negotiating, that you're very careful and you try to stay in balance with protecting the company and finalizing that sale. You don't want to give away the store just because you want to seal a deal. During the negotiation phase, always try to allow for gimmies that portray flexibility rather than giving away the store just to close the deal. For example, an easy gimme would be if your standard contract includes a section for extinguisher inspection services, but the customer is not contracting for that service. They may ask you to remove that section. That's a really, really, really easy gimme. When dealing with some of your larger customers, for example, universities, hospitals, large not-for-profits, real estate companies, they may not be willing to sign your standard company contract. So what do? Do you not work with that customer, or do you then ask that your own standard contract be included as an attachment or addendum to the customer's contract? I say you do the latter because, sometimes that could be a really great opportunity for your company, so long as you have some good understandings and some safeguarded procedures, which is part of your own standard contract. Next slide, please, Ken.
Liability, liability, liability. One of the first things Maggie looks at when she examines a contract, especially one of those long ones, is the page that pertains to the liability insurance. You can have all the requirements to do the job, the technical requirements, but do you meet the liability and other insurance requirements? How do you meet them? Is your insurance company able to circumvent or make some changes to be able to have you meet them? That's a particular expertise that Maggie has. Do I have adequate liability insurance? Maggie?
Thank you, Bob. Well, if you're in the commercial fire business and you deal with very large customers or institutions, you will need a minimum of $5 million combined general liability and umbrella insurance. I've seen requests up to $10 million combined, but usually the standard is $6 to $7 million combined, especially for institutions such as hospitals and universities. Customers may require you to add them as an additional insured to your general liability policy. They may ask you to waive subrogation rights or to the hold harmless clause. Be very careful with each one of these. What do each of these terms mean? Let me go into that a little bit for you. What does additional insured mean? Additional insured is a person or organization that enjoys the benefits of being insured under an insurance policy in addition to whoever originally purchased the insurance policy. The term generally applies when liability and property insurance, but it's an element of other policies as well. Most often it applies where the original named insured, for example a company, needs to provide insurance coverage to additional parties, for example a customer, so that the customer has protection from risks that arise out of that company's conduct or operations. An additional insured often gains the status by means of an endorsement which is added to the policy, which either identifies the additional party by name or by a general description contained in what's called a blanket additional insured endorsement. What does a waiver of subrogation mean? Well, subrogation involves one person taking over the rights or remedies of another against a third party. To the extent that damages are covered by property insurance, the customer and the company waive all rights against each other and against contractors, consultants, agents, and employees of the other for damages, except for rights to proceeds from insurance. An insurance contract is really a contract of indemnity. It allows a party to receive insurance proceeds, and claim against third parties would mean that they might recover more than their fair share or their total loss. Well, subrogation operates to prevent such over-recovery, which I'm sure all of us appreciate, when we're paying our general liability premiums each year, because I'm sure if you're in the business such as we are, they only go up, they never go down. And lastly, what's a hold harmless clause? A hold harmless clause is when the right to hold a person liable through a lawsuit is waived. The waiver may be called such as this, a hold harmless clause. Other terms you might have heard that are very much like a hold harmless clause are exculpatory clause, liability waiver, or legal release. You really need to be very cautious with each of these last two terms, not so much the additional insured, but the waiver of subrogation and the hold harmless clause. Always check with your insurance company and determine if they allow for these types of waivers or releases of clauses. General liability and errors and omissions insurance are generally required. What does that mean? What is errors and omissions insurance? Well, it's also known as professional liability insurance, and further it's also called professional indemnity insurance. But honestly, it's more commonly known as errors and omissions. It's really another form of liability insurance. It doesn't replace your general liability insurance. It's in addition to. It helps protect service providers from bearing the full cost of defending against a negligence claim made by a customer and damages awarded in a civil lawsuit. The coverage protects you in situations where you fail to perform and the possible financial losses that you might see caused by the errors or omissions in the services that you performed. These are potential causes for legal action that would not be covered by a more general liability insurance policy, which only addresses more direct forms of harm. Many companies don't realize this until it's too late. and they're taken in the civil claims for their errors and omissions. Just so you know, though, the coverage does not include criminal prosecution. And finally, you could have more than adequate coverage. You could have all these coverages that we've spoken about today and do everything right and still may be drawn into a lawsuit. For example, you may have heard of the Stouffer's Inn fire, which occurred in Westchester, New York, back in December of 1980. Next slide, please.
Well, thank you very much, Maggie. That was a great presentation. You know, the Stouffer's Inn fire in Westchester and also the MGM Grand Fire in Las Vegas were two fires that really caused a lot of changes in fire regulations throughout the country. Additionally, the Stouffer's Inn fire, the alarm company was taken into the case. The fire alarm system did react, but the claim was that it didn't react fast enough. So if you're going to be in the fire alarm business, you know, liability is just, you know, slapped on your forehead, whether you're a part of it or not, because many times they bring as many people as possible into a lawsuit. Ken, just to go over 2 points that you brought up about the NICET certification and the PE, you know, I recommend that people get NICET certified and that they use professional engineers when they design systems. But those two professional qualifications are individual qualifications and they're not company qualifications. And I don't know of any municipality, to my knowledge, requires that you have that person on staff in order to file any plans or things like that. So it's a personal license. For example, in New York, you can have a PE seal your plans, but he could be one that he could be a chemical engineer. As long as he's a professional engineer, he doesn't have to be an electrical or an HVAC engineer, you know, in order to get it done. So that it's important that you use those professions, but sometimes you do have them required in the specification, but it's been my experience that if you work with us, you know, a lot of times you can get those things negotiated out, especially if your price is, you know, on the low side. If anybody has any questions, you know, we're open to the floor right now, Ken. If you have any questions later, please contact Jennifer Sabatino, who I'd like to thank for doing an excellent presentation, spending a lot of time to help us out in getting this done. Her name and telephone number and email address are on this last slide, and I don't know if you can provide copies of the presentation, but we'd be more than glad to if anybody needs to, Ken. And I will also take any questions that you have at this particular time.
One question that came in is, does the PE have to reside in the installing jurisdiction? Well, he has to be licensed in the installing jurisdiction, I can tell you that.
Yeah, residents, I mean, you know, then again, you would have to check with the, if he's licensed in that municipality, I would assume, but I don't know, you know, it's a big country. You know, I don't know what particular location that the person is talking about, but if he wants to send the question to us, if we can help, we're familiar with certain states, but, you know, we're not sure if that's the case. But I know they would have to be licensed in that state.
That's the really important issue to be addressed, and that is each jurisdiction, because our audience is really from all over the country, has their own fire installation requirements. You need to know what they are. You might have an alarm license, and that state-issued or local-issued license may permit you to install a fire alarm system. But you may then enter into a more local municipality, a city, a town, a village, where they've enacted their own requirement, and these requirements can be all over the place. You might need a PE or architect to sign off on your plan. You might need NICET level. They may actually say it. You need a NICET level, certain level, to sign off on your plan or do the installation. You might need NICET level or certain level of experience to do the installations or do the servicing, never mind the plans. Those are the kind of things that you need to look for when you're getting involved in fire. I'm going to just address one or two other things that you could have guessed I would get to. One, you need a proper contract when you do fire. And the proper contract is the Fire All-in-One. There's no substitute for that contract. Will you always be able to get it signed? No. Will your subscribers sometimes insist on changes? Yes. But you start with it. If you don't start with it, you're never going to get to it. That's for sure. One of the most salient features of the Fire All-in-One really brings you right back to Briscoe's presentation today, and that is that the Fire All-in-One expresses AHJ involvement and AHJ control over the entire system, the design, the installation, the checking of it, the final permitting of it. Everything is controlled by the AHJ, and the contract says so. One of the important features of the contract is that should the AHJ change their mind, and yes they do, during installation, they may want something different or more, the subscriber has to pay for it, not you. All right? The contract really makes that clear. Because of the contract terminology, you really shouldn't be faced with a subscriber that says, wait a minute, I hired you, you're the expert, you're supposed to design this thing, it got approved initially, why do I have to now spend an extra $20,000 to install this because a change was demanded of us by an AHJ? You should have known that to begin with. Well, the contract deals with that issue. One of the words that we haven't heard in this entire presentation, interestingly enough, is the word electrician. And you might find that in some jurisdictions you need to be a master electrician in order to install or hook up this fire alarm system. I believe in New York City there is some electrician requirements. Maybe Bob could address that. And purposes of this presentation, I think you also what's very important to know is that those of you that are out there that have the potential of getting involved in commercial fire alarm systems, but it's really not your expertise, you don't want to have to walk away from it, you want to call Briscoe, and you want to get them involved and salvage that account and that part of the business, and partner up with them in some way that I'm sure they'll be happy to discuss with you. Bob, any other points you want to make or respond to anything I've said?
Yes, Ken, a couple of points. Very important when you're making that transition between a security and you're going to the trouble and the expense and the worry of doing fire alarm systems, especially when you're planning your exit plan from the industry. One thing that that buyers are going to be looking for is do you have a proper contract, not only for the services you're providing, but in some states you become the contractor of record once you install that system, and those systems last for a very long time. So buyers are looking for something like a Kenny Kirschenbaum contract, which is the name Kirschenbaum and Kirschenbaum contract almost takes away contract. They know if you have that you have. Ken's contracts are the standard, which everybody else is measured, and it gives everybody a very good feeling of relief if you're trying to sell your business if you have those contracts in-house. Secondly, I did not mention licensed electrical contractors because the code does not really say licensed electrical contractor. It says a special license, and that special license in New York City right now is a licensed electrical contractor for commercial installations in order to file a request or a permit to do an installation with the fire department. The form is an A433, and that must be sealed by a licensed electrical contractor. But the code does not specifically mention a licensed electrical contractor, and that's why I didn't specifically mention it.
Tom, I got a few other questions I want to throw at you before we close out.
Sure.
And, one is, will Briscoe partner in New Jersey or in Florida? That's one question.
Okay, well, you know, Ken, I'll use any excuse to go to Florida, but unfortunately, New York City and Long Island at this particular time is where our expertise lies. You know, we don't want to be able to give them half information. We will, as a public service, take questions from anywhere without a country at no charge and try to help people out as a way of paying forward for all the good advice that we've gotten over the years, but we do not have that expertise in those particular areas. Though I do know about things, you know, I don't want to be half a fire alarm distributor.
What about in New Jersey? Do you provide services in New Jersey?
No, I don't. New York City and Long Island at this particular time is where our expertise lies.
Okay, here's one that you might be able to help out with. What about pricing structure for engineered systems? That's the question.
Okay.
Answer.
Well, we provide the lowest prices we feel in the industry for engineered systems, if that's what your customer is asking. Of course, it depends on, like security systems, how many floors are in the building, how many smoke detectors. You know, there's a whole plethora of requirements to do, but we will work with your any installer, and we give the lowest prices in the industry because we're factory direct, authorized, you know, master distributors for probably the, you know, Edwards System Technology, which is the one of the top lines of fire alarm equipment in the industry, and probably the most specified fire alarm equipment in the industry as well.
Let's see. The question is there a standard sample contract available outlining Briscoe responsibilities and partnership? So I don't know whether Briscoe has a standard form that you enter into when you partner with somebody.
No, there's not a standard form. Some customers may request that we do a non-compete with their customers, which we will, but more than gladly. But there's, you know, it's customized to each individual customer's, you know, requirements.
Sounds like there's an opportunity for 3 partners. Them, you, and me.
Yeah, that's very true, and we're always glad to be able to help because nobody has all the answers to these things. And I know when I was in the security business, you know, you wanted to keep your friends close and your competition even closer, and you really didn't want to give up anything to anybody else. But in order to be able to get to that bigger pot, and I think and insulate yourself from the competition, you have to rely and have faith and have good dealings with people. We will give recommendations of other companies that have done business with us and are doing business with us. We'll gladly let those recommendations out to anybody.
Another hot question that just came in. Please address the issue of licensed master electricians who wrongly assume their license covers them for fire alarm installation. I'm not sure that that's wrong, because in some jurisdictions, being a licensed master electrician may actually meet the criteria required for installing fire alarm systems. But perhaps you can address that.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of confusion regarding that, and you would have to depend on the municipality that you're talking about. Some municipalities allow restricted electrical licenses to be used for installations of fire alarm systems as well. But generally in New York City, I know there's a situation where a licensed electrical contractor may be allowed to install a system. However, in order to go to a final inspection, they must have an alarm company, a licensed alarm company there with them at the location, even though they can install it in order to go to the inspection and go through the things they have to have a licensed alarm company.
But don't you need a licensed electrician to actually do the hookup of the alarm system, the fire alarm system, actually plugging it in?
Well, you do. I mean, it's a high voltage electricity, depending on the situation. I know on union jobs in New York, you can't even wire the control panel. You have to give them, as-built drawings for control panel and everything. So it depends on the situation.
In New York City, the fire alarm company can install the entire system. When it comes to hooking the panel into the hardwired 110 volts, you're going to need an electrician to do that installation.
Without a doubt, the licensed electrical contractor, the application for the permit in New York City, which is called an A433, is required to be sealed by a licensed electrical contractor who has that responsibility, and it lists all the devices and things that are going to be installed on the job. So he has that responsibility. Whether he allows other people to do it, I don't know. I can't tell you,
Well, it has to be under the master electrician.
Yeah, it has to be under the master electrician. That's really what the case is. And an inspector is looking, when he does a final inspection, it could be that the licensed electrician is there, but he has to have a representative from the fire alarm company that has the proper certificate of fitness there in order to be able to go through the inspection with him. And that's
another question that's asked, which I'll take, is can a company be sued for not providing a timely inspection? Well, can you be sued? The answer to that is yes. Will it be successful? That's the issue. If you're under contract to provide services and you don't provide them, then you are opening yourself up to exposure. So it's not just failing to provide inspection, which might have revealed an inoperable system or a system that's defective, which later can be shown to have been either the cause of the fire or would have anticipated or picked up the fire more quickly than it was actually reported. So the answer is when you contract to do something, you do expose yourself by not performing or performing in a way that is less than adequate performance. That's the answer to that particular question. So I don't have any other questions at the, well, wait a minute, here we go. You have a licensed engineer on staff. Oh, we did that one already. Okay, so I think we're out of questions. We got a bunch of thank yous here, and I want to thank Bob and his team for a very informative presentation. I'd like to remind everyone that we are willing to host and sponsor presentations if you're willing to share your experience and issues with this forum. We generally get a great attendance, which we did today, and that's it. This presentation has been recorded and will be made available. Just contact my office and we'll be happy to provide a link for you so that you or your staff can listen to it. So having said that, again, thank you, and we're going to close out now.
Thanks, Ken, and thanks to everybody who is listening.
Okay, bye-bye.